I've changed the lens up a little bit. Do I want a second pillow? Guys, I'm sitting on a pillow. Welcome back. Oh my gosh, would you look at this? We've got a second podcast episode 2 weeks in a row. Isn't that miraculous? I too am surprised. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning back in. Welcome back to Proper Madness. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, obviously the channel is after my name because, I want freedom. I don't want to be put in a box, which leads me to today's episode. You've read the title, right? We're going to get a little weird here. We're going to get a little weird. We're going to get a little feral. We're going to get a little unhinged. Pleasure and desire is the best way for you to learn and understand the different pieces and parts of yourself that you have been avoiding. I'm going to tell you a little story. So, most of you know I'm very open about my life, generally speaking, more or less, because I feel like the best way to teach people things is to share our stories and our experiences, right? That is why I have guests on. Pleasure and desire are words that, when you first think of these words, what do you actually think of, right? I mean, be honest with yourself. Please don't put it in the comments on YouTube. We don't need to get flagged, but just keep it in your brain. We have grown up in a society where pleasure and desire are shamed to feel. We see this in overly religious people and societies. We see this in individuals who are very rigid and very hard and very tough on themselves because they lived a life of, quote, sin and did bad things, and they want to make sure they never become that person again. And then you also see this in people who were taught from a young age that they cannot do what makes them happy or what they enjoy because that would involve them doing something that was wrong or bad. It depends on the thing. Example for me. Growing up, right? Like, even though I'm quite westernized and I'm like third generation Indian, because I'm third generation and both my parents grew up also westernized to some degree, they still had a lot of cultural conditioning from their parents. And so I always grew up in a very controlled, very strict environment where I could never experience or play or do things I actually enjoyed. It always was conditional of whether or not I was allowed to do something based off of what my parents thought and believed were okay. Now, obviously, I had one parent that was more strict than the other. The other one was like free-flowing, artistic, oh my gosh, like, do whatever you want within reason, but I'm here for you, but also still pretty strict. And then I had another parent that was like the complete opposite. Good Lord. You had an engineer for one parent, you had an artist for another parent. That could work in some cases, it did not work in my case. Because I was always flip-flopping between freedom and control, most of my life growing up, I had high highs and low lows of my life feeling very free and expansive, and then my life feeling very controlled and like I was doing something wrong and I needed to stop enjoying myself. For me, it was socializing, it was hanging out with friends, it was going to parties that I was invited to, it was dating. My parents were unusually strict with dating. I'm sure a lot of immigrant parents, people, Asian culture, your parents are a bit more strict in that, and there's other various ways of this, right? And so when you have any sort of repression in your life, for some it's more extreme than others. When you have any sort of repression in your life, when we get older and we get a taste of freedom, we go off the damn deep end. Because it's exciting. Because it's new. Because we're like, whoa, don't know what this was like. I grew up in a cage my entire life emotionally and mentally, and this is what freedom is? Like, what do I do with it? It's the equivalent of when you're manifesting and calling something in, and then you're like waiting, you're like, oh, is it ever gonna get to me? And then it's handed to you, and I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but like you have the moment where you're like, wait a second, now what the fuck do I do? You're like, whoa, wait, what? It's here? Oh, okay. Do I deserve this? Is it okay for me to receive this? Huh. So, in my dating life, I've learned so much through dating and relationships, right? I'm pretty sure that is my stuff to learn here on this earth and teach other people. When I learned so much through relationships because I had partners that showed me two different sides of myself. My very first boyfriend in high school, I would say he grew up also with parents that were very, very strict. And we almost had to like sneak calling each other all the time. And like our relationship was pretty private for the most part. There were a lot of rules. I mean, we were 16, like, yes, there should be, right? Like, parents need to be parents. So we married to each other like young love, just like, oh my gosh, I have someone that makes me feel seen. Like, he would do the most beautiful things for me. He one time made me a whole playlist on his iPod and he gave it to me. He was the popular guy and was gorgeous and tall and like everything I could have wanted and more. He was always calling me. And then on my birthday, my 16th birthday, he got up and gave a speech on my birthday and told me that he loved me. And I had so many emotions. Like, the very first emotion I had was happiness. The second one that I had was fear, because he said it in front of like a lot of very strict Asian humans. Like, there was a lot of people at my birthday party, and then my grandfather, because like in my culture, right, dating someone that's not Indian back then, right, was weird. No one was doing it. Like, it was like the most taboo thing on the planet. And I just remember my grandfather coming up to me afterwards and he looked at me, he goes, does he treat you really well? I was like, yeah. He goes, then I don't really care. He goes, who cares what like any of these people think? If you love him, he loves you, he treats you really well. He's like, okay. And then that was it. And then 2 days later, I got a call from my boyfriend and he broke up with me. His parents came to pick him up for my birthday party and I don't know what happened, right? But he said, I can't be in a relationship. I'm so sorry. Like, I still mean everything that I said, but like, my parents don't want me, to be with someone. And I was like, oh. So then about a year later, he ended up dating someone and I was crushed. I was like, back then, right, I was like, oh, this is like my first love, and I was so heartbroken. But then what that conditioned me to feel later was very much like, do I deserve to be loved? Because as soon as I feel safe and I feel seen and I feel desired and like someone loves me, they leave, I experienced that loss with my grandfather. Me and my grandfather were best friends, still are. Great news is, because you're psychic, you can see and speak to spirits. So when someone passes on, you still, can feel their energy from time to time, which is like a beautiful thing. And I'm very grateful for it. And we were so close. I remember my grandfather always being like, I'm going to get emotional, always being that safe space for me. The safe masculine energy I never had growing up, he always made me feel seen, but he still gave me that structure and he still allowed me to have freedom within just being myself. Like, he never took away who I was, like my individuality. It was kind of the opposite. Like, he always tried to push me to be more like me, to take up more space, to speak for what I need, to like say I want this and I need this and let that be okay, you know? I never got that. When I lost the most safe, secure, masculine role model in my life, I was devastated. And at the same time, I was dating someone, and this was in college, much later in life. I was dating someone who was very free. Oh my God. This guy, Mr. Free Guy, like just like didn't care, took up space, like gosh, just like did whatever the hell he wanted. Like he was just so rebellious and so outspoken, and just like there's so much about him that I admired and that I loved because a part of me wanted to be like him. And then after him, I actually met a really good guy, like a really safe, good guy, and I fucked that up because I almost felt like I had something to prove in my freedom and my capacity to be like, yeah, I can be like this guy. He broke my heart. I'm going to prove him wrong. And then I met a really good guy. And he was very traditional, very like, you know, I care about you. I kind of want this. I'm struggling. I'm going through a breakup, but like, let's just see where it goes. And we got into a huge argument while I was hanging out with the other guy. You know, not great. Again, I was in college. I was a damn mess. I was also a drug addict. I always was meeting individuals that mimicked parts of myself that I always yearned and craved to be. And then I wasn't dating anyone for a long time. And then in my early mid 20s, I was in my first like adult relationship. And unfortunately, it was with someone who was very emotionally abusive and like actually a narcissist, like diagnosed. And then after that, someone who was very. Now, when I say physically abusive, I don't mean like if I experienced assault in college, like a certain very specific type, that's the same physical abuse that I experienced in that relationship. Connect the dots. I can't say a lot on the internet or online, right? So now those are very painful experiences for me and highly traumatic. However, what that mirrored to me was a lot of shame and self-punishment that I was enduring in these relationships of two humans that were making me feel angry, sad, shameful for taking up space, advocating for myself, speaking up for my own desires, actually feeling safety in intimacy and emotionally in partnership. And we hear this time and time again, right? I don't believe that people who are in abusive relationships are willingly doing that to themselves. There are some really messed up individuals who know how to say the right thing to you at the right time and keep you hooked. Unfortunately, that's a little bit of what I was going through, but also I had every chance to leave and I didn't because something inside of me believed that I deserved that punishment because I was still punishing myself for some of the things that I experienced romantically when I was younger. And so, not okay though, right? I'm not taking blame for those things or how someone else treated me. Then I ended up meeting someone that reflected back to me everything I always wanted in a partner. Like how I wanted to be treated. But it was highly codependent. And guess what that mirrored back to me, right? You can take a guess. Then after that, met someone who, and that was my longest relationship, 3.5 years. Then after that, met someone who was like on paper, like husband material. And when that ended, a very interesting thing happened. Since that ended, I was single the longest I have been, almost 6 years now. And I had a very interesting realization with my therapist a few weeks ago. And I said, I think I've purposely been punishing myself and staying single, not because I'm afraid to be alone, but I think I have not been opening myself up to actual connections that I know are open doors for me to walk through. I'm going to do a separate episode on this. And I think when that ended, I was so devastated because I felt like I lost my ideal, quote, ideal person, that I then shut out attracting the right people to me. Everyone that I was attracting at that point were emotionally unavailable, non-monogamous, like didn't believe in marriage, didn't want to have kids. The complete opposite of anything and everything I have ever been into or stood for. And I was feeling so angry, right, about it. But you know what that mirrored back to me? The fact that I was actually very deeply scared to have what I want. So my subconscious and my shadows were attracting people that were showing me what I was scared to feel and acknowledge. Like the fear of, will I ever have kids? The fear of, will I ever have someone that's like fully committed to me? The fear of, am I going to be with a partner that has the capacity to hold space and be emotionally available? Like it was all shit that I was doubting within myself. That's who I was attracting, or individuals who would choose someone else over me because I was not choosing myself. So that was like those lessons, right? And we have to go through these things. Like, yes, I might have subconsciously and energetically chosen it, but at the same time, if I didn't go through any and all of that, I never would have done more work on myself to become more emotionally available, to actually work on myself, to explore the things that I have, right? And so recently, no, I'm not dating anyone, relax. Recently, so as we know, I was celibate for 2.5 years by choice, right? By choice, but also by shame. Because I had a moment 2.5 years ago where it's not something I regret, but I had a moment where I was like, dude, you're a grown-ass woman. We need to be careful about who we share our energy with, especially if we are spiritual, especially if we're gifted. It should be someone that treats you really well and has like their shit together. I felt like shit, I felt shameful in allowing myself to feel pleasure and feel desire, but not in a way that I actually wanted it to. And just like, I guess, and that's never good. You should never share energy with someone because you feel pressured to, or because you're like, I guess. Then, my celibacy journey was all about me exploring sensuality and feminine energy and feeling my feelings and emotions, and my abilities got stronger, my discernment got stronger. It's not something I regretted, but then it came to a point where I was quite literally denying myself connection with anyone. I was like trying to force open closed doors so that I could feel better about myself in connection. Egoic, we all want to be like, oh, I want to be chosen by the person that chooses no one. No, right? Some of us know, but like that's something that I was working through. And I hit a point where I was like, this is yes, I would like love to save sharing my energy with someone that like I really love and care about. But also like, if I find someone that I trust and that is a good person and that can hold that space for me and is intentional and like knows, oh my God, aftercare, like knows basic intimacy rules, that's okay for me to do. I should not feel shameful in exploring my desires. So I broke my 2.5-year celibacy intentionally because I found a partner that felt safe for me. Not someone I'm going to date, but someone that now I'm very good friends with and that I trust, And before your brain runs and you assume some wild shit about me, it's not a friends with benefits thing. So you can just take that out of your damn mind and you can take a hike. All right, cool. But how many of us have felt scared to allow true connection, desire, and pleasure into our lives because we feel like it's wrong because of some of the things that we've been through and some of the relationships that we've had? It's not wrong, and it's not bad, and it's not shameful. And we live in a really silly, messed up world that allows us to have this perception that exploring desire, pleasure, and sensuality and feeling safe is wrong. My values are still very much the same. They haven't changed. I just made the intentional choice to actually see what it's like to be cared for, to be worshipped, to not be treated like a damn object, and to have an experience that quite literally repatterned my whole friggin' subconscious and now has set me up to know what it's like to be in an intimate situation with someone, hopefully a long-term partner, that actually cares about you, makes you feel safe, makes you feel secure, and makes you feel seen, and makes you feel heard. What the hell? That is the issue with people who deny themselves pleasure and desire done in the right way. I still stand by a lot of people do it to escape themselves, right? I could go on a whole journey and pedestal about this. When you neglect pleasure and desire, and we have that shame hovering over us, that is going to lead to you not feeling comfortable expressing yourself, or you not feeling comfortable being seen, or you not feeling comfortable taking up space. You don't need a partner to do this. You don't need to have an intimate experience to do this. You can do this on your own, right? My love languages are physical touch, quality time, and words of affirmation. And so I lean on those in my routine, right? Physical touch is the obvious one. It's nothing weird. It's genuinely touching your skin in a loving way, caressing yourself in a loving way, and allowing yourself to feel safe doing that. At one of my workshops, very recently that I held, also called Become the Art, I was helping people through creative blocks, and so I start my workshops the same because it's my method of how I'm so creative and how I'm able to express myself so clearly. And what people would love to call is I'm so magnetic. It's literally because I'm me, right? So, and you can't be yourself if you're not in your body. So what I did is I walked them through breath work, some somatic work, and then sensual movement. Now, what is interesting is I had 4 women show up and 1 guy. The man who showed up and a couple of the women who showed up were actually, they all had the same pain point and struggle. They had a hard time literally feeling what it was like to feel their energy and their own skin and caress themselves in a non-sexual way, right? A lot of people don't know what that's like. And so when I went around and I go, okay, tell me how you felt. And each one was I felt uncomfortable. I don't know what it's like to do that. I felt uncomfortable doing that. I felt shame. I felt is this wrong? Because there were other people around, they felt a little self-conscious. That same feeling, that same shame is why pleasure and desire is so taboo and spun in such weird, strange ways for validation and fulfilling needs and, whatever, right? We have people who abuse that. That's why. There's this icky negative feeling behind that. But really, truly, all it is, it's just connection to yourself. It's connection to how you feel. It's connection to loving and yearning for yourself and saying I got you and I love you and damn, I think we're hot, but like in a very grounded way, you know? So when we deny ourselves of this, we deny ourselves of our creative power. Creativity is where, kids? I feel like I'm in a classroom. Is in your sacral. What does that represent? Oh, pleasure and desire and sensuality. So when you're not creative, when you're not expressing yourself properly, when you have a creative block, when you don't know what to say to someone, when you don't feel like yourself, when you're not in your body, when you have high highs and low lows of pleasure and desire and taking up space and then wanting to hermit, it's the same thing. It's you're denying yourself something that you really are seeking and desiring. And you're not allowing yourself to explore that in a safe way. So ask yourself, how can you explore what you truly desire in a safe way that allows you to feel seen? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be the most simple thing on the damn planet. What if your pleasure and desire is, Sabby, I want to go skinny dipping and I want to feel free? Well, then go find a safe place where you can do that. You know, go with a friend, go with someone you feel comfortable with. Go with your best friend, go somewhere private where you won't get in trouble. And like, there are safe ways to do this without being irresponsible. That's why I had such a big fear of freedom, of expansiveness, of taking up space, because I had done it in irresponsible ways that were hurting me and hurting other people, right? And so when you shift the intention behind that, it holds more weight. That is this episode. That's what I'm leaving you with. I don't know how many people I'm going to rattle with this, but we move. We move, you know? I'm never going to say things in a perfect way. I'm a human being, and so are you, right? And I think we need to be a little bit more careful with holding people on a pedestal on the internet, thinking that if we're a little keyboard warrior typing and putting things into comments, that suddenly you have some sort of God complex. Where you're like, I'm going to tell this person exactly what I think because I think it's great feedback. It's going to help them grow. Yeah, all right, check yourself. Right? Like if you don't have the capacity to sit up here and talk to a camera or have a podcast, what gives you the right to even try to say something? If someone I respected and I admired said something, I'd take it into account. And if you're listening to this on wherever you're listening to this on, you're correct. I'm starting to get more hate comments. And I think it just comes with the territory, but I'm also like a deep, big believer that anytime someone leaves some sort of comment on my video, it actually is strangely some sort of subconscious thought that I have had about myself that's just being reflected back to me. That's a shadow that I probably need to work through, you know? But sometimes we need to get out of our own way and stop restricting ourselves, because that's restricting our expression. That's restricting us from being who we actually are. You know, I deeply admire the people in the communities that do what I'm speaking about correctly. I deeply admire them because how difficult is it to show up and be you in a world that has so much repression, you know, that has so much shame, that has just completely mistaken what connection, intimacy, pleasure, and desire really are, you know? It's not easy for anyone at all in any space where they do it in the right way. And the right way just matters on someone's intentions and value systems. So that is what I'm leaving you with today. Become the Art is still open. I have 20 spots. I am so excited. A lot of you have put in some applications. I got a lot to look through. Let me clear this up for everyone, because I'm seeing applications from people who are scared because they feel like they don't have an online platform, and they're like, do I qualify to like be in your mentorship? Yes, you don't have to have an online platform. One of my students is actually a singer and a songwriter, and he no longer has an online platform, but he's booking gigs and is moving out to Nashville and pursuing his dreams as a musician and a producer. How we show up and how we create and how we take up space shows up differently, not just online, it's also like in life. So if you're having a really hard time in doing that, right, and remembering who you are, and I feel like it's such an ethereal thing to throw at people, but it's pretty simple. It's a lot of us are a version of ourselves that we feel empty, and we're not attracting the right people in our life. We have this deep-seated loneliness within us, even though we're showing up, even though we're creating, even though we're doing the things that we think we love. Are we really being ourselves? And the only person that can answer that is you. And the only part of you in your body that can answer that is your soul. Because if you feel empty inside, and you feel like you're not attracting the right community, the right people, the right opportunities to you, and you're living a dream that is for someone else and not for you, that's kind of how you know you're not being yourself. That's kind of how you know you're not creating from what really truly lights you up and what allows you to express who you are. Like, I don't help people with views. I don't help people with followers. I don't help you go viral. I think all that shit is overrated. I think if you have a mission and a purpose in life to make a difference in the world through what you create and your art, and because it fucking lights you up inside, that's what matters. And then the right people and opportunities come to you, yeah. So anyways, applications are open. Also, to answer your questions for House of the Muse, everything's in my website though too. So like if you click the link below, it'll take you to all the places you need to go to. House of the Muse is like how do I say this? It's more of just community. You're not really going to be in my mentorship. It's more of, you want more artists and creatives to connect with. You want to see all my resources that I've ever come up with ever on like storytelling, self-expression, identity work, shadow work for creativity. That's a fun one. All of that's in there. All my past master classes are in there. So all the replays are there, which are kind of fun. So you don't, like, if you missed one, it's there. You have access to it. And then you get deals and promotions off of retreats that I'm probably going to be hosting next year, and workshops that are coming up in person, or even future virtual little classes. So that's the difference. The Become the Art version is all of that, plus the mentorship, plus group calls twice a month, and then a one-on-one call with me, so that I really dive into your damn soul and I'm like, what's up? Create the things that are going to destroy people in a great way, So anyways, I love you guys. You're amazing. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. You're talented. Take up space. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do what you love, because you can. Okay? Go do something you really enjoy today. Write down something you enjoy, like something that just lights you up, and go figure out a way to do it. Okay. Goodbye. Good old TikTok. And be sure to stay tuned for my Tea Time with Sabby episodes.